Welcome to episode 7 of the Hunter Baumgardt Sports Podcast. My name is Hunter Baumgardt, your host. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at HunterBeOnAir. Be sure to like the Hunter Baumgardt Sports Facebook page. But thanks for either watching or listening. You can watch on YouTube or listen on SoundCloud. I highly suggest doing either, whichever suits you. But today we have a really exciting interview. Dave Carney, the WKTY Morning Show Host, is going to join us. And he's always a really fun interview. You can ask him, of course, about sports, but also he's like 15 to 20 years older than me. So how does this COVID-19 pandemic compare to other worldwide events that he has lived through in his life? So those questions coming up next. Let's talk to Dave Carney right here on the Hunter Baumgardt Sports Podcast. Joining us on the Hunter Baumgardt Sports Podcast is Dave Carney, morning show host on WKTY in La Crosse. Dave, really appreciate the time today.
Hey, Hunter, thanks for having me on. I feel like I finally made it somewhere. I get to be on your podcast, which, by the way, looks brilliant. When you watch this thing on YouTube, first of all, we're good-looking guys. That's easy to see. But when you see how clean this thing looks on YouTube, it's stunning. I know you said your brother had a hand in it. Congratulations, guys. Looks great. Happy to be here.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And it's been definitely a fun learning process and just kind of creating the podcast and happy to have you on as well. So I wanted to talk, obviously we'll get to the sports of everything and when things might come back, et cetera. And there's no clear answers, obviously, but wanted to just first ask, how has life been without sports and hosting a morning show without sports going on, a sports morning show without sports, and just life with COVID-19 going on?
Right. So multifaceted sort of a situation that we're in, and so a multifaceted answer. I'm doing fine. My wife's doing fine. My son's doing fine. My wife's worked from home for years. I've been a morning guy for years. To us, essentially, and I've been lucky enough to continue to go into studio as part of the essential crew. To us, essentially, life hasn't changed a dramatic amount, right? We miss going out with our friends on the weekend, miss being able to go visit some of our neighborhood haunts, places in La Crosse, here in Stoddard. We try to take out food as much as we can. But in a lot of ways, it hasn't changed that dramatically for us yet. On the sports side, Hunter, it's changed a great deal. Somebody that has to live and sleep sports in order to have the thrust of their conversation in the morning lined up for them needs to be more creative in times like these. So what we've been doing is really kind of digging into some of what makes us sports fans. And you participated in a article we recently published on our website, WKTYsports.com, where we were asked, who are our favorite athletes of all time from all sports? Well, we've done things like my top 5 favorite Bucks, or the best Bucks in my estimation, favorite baseball players. The sports that we enjoy, and I think that we can see this more now, 2-3 weeks into having to be self-isolated, the sports that we enjoy have a lot more to do with an emotional resonance than they do with an analytical approach to a game, with breaking down film. Most fans don't interact with sports on a level like you or I or Grant or somebody else would that does this for a living. They're going to enjoy it for what it is. It's a relief from their day-to-day life and their troubles. And when you see that void start to grow wider, you really start to think about the magnitude of what sports means to people, besides just how cool it is that Aaron Rodgers is the Packers quarterback, or that Giannis is the greatest player in the NBA, or that Yelich is the best baseball player. In Wisconsin, we're extremely blessed right now. So for me, it's been examining how sports figures itself into the lives of the listeners, to people that I know and I talk to on a daily basis, but that normal conversation would take place over those lack of sports conversations because we've always had sports. So it's been big.
Yeah, and usually we have the sports to distract us. Like, if something's going on in the world that, is a hard time or something, usually sports can unite people, unite the country, unite people from all over the world. And now that that's also gone, I think it's like, wow, that's also a huge reality check when all of a sudden the entertainment and the things that we maybe escape from the real world with all of a sudden gets taken away. And I think that's kind of what people are now realizing, that, I think that maybe was a reality check for maybe a lot of people.
Yes, definitely. Sports has been an exceptional escapism on an institutional level since the days of Julius Caesar, since the days of Pompeii. The Romans understood better than anybody that in a large empire, where you have fluctuations of political will and political might, wars, poverty of different kinds. In a big time country, having sports is essential to the life that people live, the ability for them to be distracted from the harsh realities of what they're going to have to face back home, on the job, without a job, whatever that is. And so you're right, when you miss out on that, it really changes the way that you approach your day-to-day life. Water cooler discussions between most guys in the state of Wisconsin are about the seasonal sports that we're in. How was high school football? Did you see the basketball game? Did you watch the Crew play? Are you going to the Packers? When those things change, it alters how we interact with each other too, which, Hunter, in your age range and my age range, we're about 15, 20 years apart in age.
Yeah.
There's a big difference in how our age groups interact with each other more and more. So the ripple effect of this, which I don't think that we're fully picturing yet where this all goes, the ripple effect it's magnificent in its scale. And I don't mean that in a good way. I mean, it is, in a biblical sense, magnificent in scale. It's epic in proportion. We've never seen anything like this, ever.
Yeah. Yeah. It truly feels like that as well. Speaking of that, I was going to ask you this. So like you've obviously, as you said, we have a difference of age, about 15, 20 years. You've seen things like, you obviously remember like a 9/11 and things like that. And I was 3 years old and I don't have any recollection of it. So how does this, compare with other worldwide events that have just kind of, stopped the world in a sense? And maybe that's the only comparison, but how does this compare with the other life experiences that you've had that's kind of stopped your world?
Yeah. So I'm turning 40 this year. And what that means is that on September 11th, 9/11, I was actually 3 days removed from my 21st birthday. I turned 21 on September 14th, 2001.
Okay.
I had a planned trip to Las Vegas with buddies of mine. I lived in LA. I was working out there at the time. We were going to go to Las Vegas. Now, none of that happened. The big difference, the way that I saw it, especially Grant, as a sports guy, is this. We took a day or two off, maybe a week. It wasn't more than that, but we took a couple of days off. We had to get grounded in some way, shape, or form. A collective catching of the breath was necessary and completely warranted. However, the nation was given a distraction, a spectacle, unlike anything we had ever seen. And you weren't old enough to remember this yet, but in my lifetime, in the 40 years now that I've been here, that is the most unified I have ever felt this country, ever. We're in the days following 9/11. Now, human nature is such that you grow accustomed to things, take it for granted. A week, a month, 2 months, a year down the road, the goodwill that we had, unfortunately, was mostly lost. But in those few days, it was incredible.
Yeah.
The world did not stop on a dime, though. When 9/11 happened, you could go to the movies. You could go out to dinner. You wanted to go to a bar with your buddies. I was your age. We couldn't go to Vegas. We went to Santa Barbara instead. It was eerie. The feeling wasn't the same. People weren't in a party mood. But there were enough of us willing to tie one on for a 21st that said, hey, we made it. The planes are going to start flying in a couple of days, which was really eerie not to hear airplanes for a few days. But the world didn't stop. This is unlike anything we have ever seen. The only thing that I could compare this to would be something that we weren't, and nobody that we know now really is old enough to remember, and that would have been the pandemic of 1919 that followed World War I, right? All these soldiers come back, and they spread essentially the H1N1, the common Spanish flu, around, and it killed anywhere between 17 and 50 million people. But even then, commerce wasn't conducted the way that it is now. We didn't have the speed of business the way that we have now. So I know this is a long answer, but there is just literally nothing to compare this to. For my lifetime, this is the most enormous. And for you and your age range, you guys have been given a tough go of it. The 2001 started you off. Then you have the financial collapse of 2008. Now you get this. I'm sorry. Yeah. It's an interesting time for you to be coming up in.
I know it is. And it's just been a strange time to graduate too, graduating in December. And then, with obviously, the job market is, all over the place and now very, very halted. So it's different, but it's just life. I mean, that's how it is. And it's interesting. But I always like to hear your views on things like that, and getting away from sports a little bit too as well. Dave Carney joining us, WKTY Morning Show Host here on the Hunter Baumgardt Sports Podcast. So I wanted to ask you, let's shift a little bit to sports. There's been plans, there's been people kind of saying their ideas of how they want sports to come back, when they want it to come back. The MLB specifically put out a couple plans the last week. One focusing getting everybody to Arizona and playing some games, some focused on some games in Florida, some games in Arizona. What do you kind of think of the couple plans that the Major League Baseball has rolled out that may include some baseball being played in the coming months?
Difficult. A week or so ago, a week and a half ago, I wrote an article for our website, and it essentially outlined my reticence to have sports back without fans. Something that Gene Smith, the athletic director for Ohio State, recently echoed. If it's not safe enough for fans, why is it safe enough for players? So the problems to me become more magnified the further out we look from these particular plans. The Florida-Arizona is a complete non-starter. Logistically, not a chance of plane travel and all that happening from those two facilities. Okay, that's one thing. Then the number two problem is this. In Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NFL, I'm not sure about Major League Soccer, the NHL, there are players' unions. Those are union men. These are associations. You need to convince all of them to leave their families, leave their wives, their children, their mothers, their fathers. These are thousands of men. Then you have to do that to all of your coaches and the staff, all of the essential personnel for all of the teams, all of the referees or the umpires and all of their staff, all of the broadcasters and all of their staff, all the medical personnel and all of their staff. Hunter, as much as I love baseball, basketball, football, boxing, hockey, give it to me. The more that I think about it, the less likely I believe these things will become viable, not for a lack of desire, not for a lack of motivation, financial and otherwise. I just don't know how they get this done. And then when you think of the college level, buddy, that's a really big problem, because if a college that tells you as an unpaid performer to come back when it's not safe for you or me or another regular student, but you need to show up because we need money, good luck convincing me that I'm an amateur. Right. Because now I am a professional, and I just don't know how they're going to do it this year. We need to have tests available for everybody. They need to have a close enough, if not a surefire vaccine. This needs to be like the flu. And I know that there's a lot of people, I'm no scientist, so I'm not trying to give my opinion on what this means medically, but if what we're seeing is even close to accurate, a 2% mortality rate, that is so far ahead of the flu or the cold or anything. It's hard to tell people that's not a real risk, even if the numbers might not make it look like so on paper. So I don't know, Hunter, that baseball's ideas, as grand as they are, I like it, I really do. But to convince a union association of grown men to do this, they can do what they want with the Korean baseball league or the basketball league. Those players don't have a choice. You're going to do it like this, or you're not playing in our league. This is different. This is a partnership. I don't know how they do this. Really, I'm going to ask you about that tomorrow on my show.
Yeah. No, I'll have to think about that. But yeah, I think I've thought about it a little bit. I think it's right, like you said. I mean, what if like say they are able to convince everybody to go to Arizona? One person gets it, they're probably going to shut the whole thing down. Then all of that work that went into getting them there, all of a sudden it's over and it was all for naught. So it's sad when you think about it, because obviously we all want sports back, but it's the realistic view of it. I want to ask you, you mentioned the NBA there. Bucks obviously having an exceptional season before all this started. And I know you're a big Bucks fan, kind of we all are here in Wisconsin. How big of a heartbreak would it be to if they just said, okay, we're not going to do the rest of the season after such a good start, or 3/4 of a regular season?
Devastation. Ultimate annihilation. If you've ever had the woman or man of your dreams who you thought for sure you were going to marry and spend the rest of your life with tell you that they were leaving you for their boss who's 40 years your senior and possibly the opposite sex of you, you're freaking out. You don't know what to do. This is the worst possible scenario you could have ever imagined. And for the Bucks, they were on a 3-game losing streak. The Boston Celtics were next. This was a team reeling a little bit that needed to get themselves back on track. Hunter, I am completely crushed for the Bucks. I really am, for the fans, for the players. All of this is just the worst. As a Lakers / Bucks fan, I don't really feel that bad for LeBron James.
Right.
I feel like the Lakers, and in particular the NBA season, felt like it was whoever was willing to fill Kobe's shoes the best, which I've always felt was Giannis as the next guy up, was the deserving of the title guy. Whoever that was going to be what the season was going to be about, paying tribute to probably the first or second hardest core basketball player that's ever lived. Greatest, I don't know. But that guy, Kobe, was all about hoops. That's it. And it showed. Same with Giannis. This is awful. The great thing about the Bucks having Giannis right now, and I don't know if you read the article in Sports Illustrated recently, was just about the immense relationship that Giannis and his family have with the city of Milwaukee, with the state of Wisconsin. Giannis's brother, we profiled him about 3.5 weeks ago on the show, is one of a few top-rated basketball recruits in the state of Wisconsin, along with Jordan and Johnny Davis from Central High School here in La Crosse, Terrence Thompson in there, but not quite in that same discussion. So you've got Thanasis, who plays with the Herd and with the Milwaukee Bucks. Giannis playing with the Bucks. Costas, he plays with the Lakers on a two-way deal, but his brother out here, his young son, I believe it is, his young child, his girlfriend, his mother, Giannis isn't going anywhere. So as bad as this is, it's not like one of those situations where you couldn't finish out and you lose in the second round, and then he's got a big decision to make going into his future. So from that perspective, very happy and hopeful that there will be more seasons like this. The Bucks will be better positioned than a lot of teams, Hunter, to whenever the NBA restarts, because it will get back someday. It just might not be when we'd like it to be this year. Okay. Yeah. But they will be better positioned in the long term. That's a young team, a veteran young team, but a very young team. The Lakers, the Clippers, the Rockets, you name it. Those teams are playing with borrowed time. Their stars are aging up and aging out. The Bucks are aging into their prime. Don't forget, Michael Jordan was in his 7th season when he won a championship. I know Giannis is too, but Jordan was nearing 30. Giannis is 25.
Yeah.
So the trajectory of when he came into the league versus Michael as well gives him some more years on that to be able to get this Milwaukee team where I think we both had expected they could have potentially been this year, which is sitting at the top of the mountain.
Yeah, and I hope if it's safe that they can resume the year, but if not, like you said, they are set up for a very good future. One last question for you. I know you lived in Vegas for a long time. They were going to have the draft there this year. Now they're doing it virtually. What do you think about this virtual NFL draft coming up next week?
Glad I got my refund on my hotel, and my flight gave me a voucher for next year. I was going out to Vegas for the first round of the draft.
Were you really?
Yeah, it was. I had my trip booked a month and a half ago, and I was so excited. It would have been the premier place, the destination city of the world to go and see one of the premier sporting events. I don't care that there's no actual game being played, but one of the premier sporting events in the world. I couldn't have been more excited. I couldn't be less excited about the virtual draft. I'm glad that they're doing it, right? Yeah. We're going to talk about it. We've got 2 weeks of show coming up to the draft. Thank you, NFL. I appreciate that. But a lot of this is losing its luster to me, Hunter. It really is, because what we're watching here is an attempt to pretend that what's happening isn't happening. We can all see what's happening. Everything's changing in front of us. So some of it feels a little hollow, like that crazy, stupid horse thing the NBA did this weekend. Paul Pierce looks like he can't play basketball.
That was awful.
Like before in his life. It was embarrassing. So this will be okay. I think the NFL, above any other organization, will figure out a way to do this right. I'm curious to see where Jonathan Taylor, I'm curious to see where, if Quintez Cephas gets drafted in a middle round, is he a 7th round guy? What about Zach Bond? Is he going to find himself to a 1st round grade? I could even see a scenario, and this sounds crazy and quite homerish, where the Packers in rounds 1, 2, and 3 are actually able to pick up Badger players. You've got the center, Tyler
Biotic. Yep.
Okay. he would be a decent pick up there.
Mm-hmm.
There would be some need for him. I could see Jonathan Taylor going late first round, possibly 30th overall. Just saying. And though Quintez Cephas isn't a fast receiver, he would be another option on the outside, possibly a slant guy to work in with the Packers. So it could be, it's going to be a fun draft. We have to be excited for how it looks and what it's going to look like. I don't know.
Yeah, right. It's going to be more interesting almost to analyze it after the fact. I don't know if it's going to be the most exciting TV, watching it live. But Dave Carney is the morning show host on WKTY. You can hear him 96.7 FM, 580 AM, or, of course, WKTYsports.com and the WKTY app. Dave, really appreciate the time, and stay healthy and stay safe.
Thanks, Hunter. Appreciate you having me on. It's a great podcast. Can't wait to look at it.
Thank you.
That's Dave Carney, morning show host on WKTY. You can hear him weekday morning 6 to 9 on 96.7 FM, 580 AM in La Crosse, or, of course, WKTYsports.com or the WKTY app. You can follow him on Twitter at DapperDaveC. So always really fun to talk to him. Talked a little bit about the Romans and Julius Caesar, nice little history lesson, and talking about how this relates to things back in the day and how sports really were a distraction and how they can't be now. But hope you enjoyed that interview. We will talk to you again coming up next week. A really fun guest as well next week. So be sure to tune in right here on either YouTube or SoundCloud. Watch on YouTube, listen on SoundCloud. Just search Hunter Baumgardt Sports. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at HunterBOnAir. Be sure to like the Facebook page, Hunter Baumgardt Sports. Stay healthy, stay inside, other than obviously getting some fresh air. Hopefully it gets warmer in the next few days. And as always, stay positive.